Hello, everybody. We're going to make a start now. I think we've given a little bit of time for people to join. Can I say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening? We are spanning many time zones here, from certainly from this panel of speakers that we have. And I just wanted to welcome everybody to today's panel discussion on navigating ageism in IP law. We're hoping to have a dialogue about fostering intergenerational excellence. And it's we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion, but often age is missing from that conversation. And as one of our speakers today reminded me, it's something that hopefully we all get to experience. You know, we might not get to experience gender discrimination, but maybe age is something that, you know, hopefully we all will have in what we do in our day-to-day lives. Um, Today, we do have an excellent panel of speakers, but I'm going to introduce them after doing a little bit of housekeeping. So today's webinar will be recorded. There is a Q&A box. We've decided that if you could submit your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll handle those at the end. For technical problems, please also see the chat box that's available. And after we finish, there is a brief survey, and we would greatly appreciate your feedback. Right. So let me introduce the panel of speakers that we have. I'm Saiful Khan. I'm from Potter Clarkson. I'm sort of centrally located in terms of time zones. I'm a patent and trademark patent attorney, and my firm is a firm of UK European patent attorneys and IP solicitors. I'm going to introduce Bonnie Marcus. She's an award-winning entrepreneur, written a number of books on ageism and particularly the intersectionality with gender. She assists. She's a Forbes contributor, writer, podcast host, and executive coach. And her details can be found at bonniemarcusleadership.com. And I do recommend that you reach out to her. She's authored a couple of books, as I say, so she's probably going to be the most distinguished person we have on our panel. But not to take away the thunder from Blanca Mejía, who's based in Honduras, who is an attorney with a master's degree in IP and works at Bufete Mejía and Asociados in Honduras, and will bring a younger generational and Latin America perspective to our discussions today. And lastly, but certainly not least, we've got Mami Hino, who's a partner at Abe Ikubo and Katayama. She's a Japanese patent attorney who's been admitted to practice in New York, and she has, you know, brings a wealth of experience from her extensive experience in IP and is sort of in Japan and elsewhere. I'm now gonna, thank you. I'm gonna now start by opening up the first question. I'm gonna go to Bonnie first. And I think what we wanted to do was start by defining ageism. We also wanted to look, as a practical follow-on, Bonnie, how you see ageism play out and what are the most damaging stereotypes for both younger and generational employees that you've found.
Well, thank you. And thank you for including me in the panel. So I'd like to start out with kind of the official definition of ageism by the World Health Organization. And that is prejudice, in other words, how we feel, discrimination, how we act, and then stereotypes, how we think about age or perceived age. And I'd like to emphasize also the words perceived age, because very often people are discriminated against not by their chronological age, but how they look. And this actually affects women a lot more than men. And there's a term called lookism, where as women show visible signs of aging, they're viewed as less competent. So the pressure on women to look young and act young has everything to do with the way they're perceived based on their looks. There, in the workplace, we see hard discrimination and soft discrimination. Hard discrimination is when somebody is, say, terminated based on their age, and somebody younger is replacing them, or they don't get a promotion because they're older. But softer discrimination could be kind of, remarks, inappropriate remarks. And certainly in my work and in my book, Not Done Yet, there are a lot of remarks women talked about where, oh, you were around with Abe Lincoln, right? Or look at you on Snapchat, there's kind of these offhanded remarks, some of which are meant in jest, but certainly aren't necessarily taken that way. What I have found in my research, and this is validated by a lot of other researchers, is that when it comes to ageism, you're either too young or too old. Now, in my research of women, and I did some extensive research globally, right, of women between the ages of 18 and 60 plus. And my research found that 77% of women under 35 and 88% of women over 54 had very similar experiences in the workplace when it came to ageism. They were not invited to meetings. Their opinions weren't valued, and they were often overlooked. They were overlooked for special projects, um, and promotions because of their age and their perceived age as well. The comment that I'd like to make is that because of this emphasis on lookism, women experience ageism earlier than men. So I don't want, just because my research has been focused on women, I'm very aware of the fact that everybody is subjected to ageism at some point. It's just that women do face it earlier, and it dramatically affects their career at every stage. But in terms of what both genders experience over 50, you're assumed to be too old to learn new things. You're assumed that, you can't learn technology. That in research has been totally debunked, right? You assume that you don't have the stamina or commitment to your job and career, that you really want to cut back on your work. And those kinds of assumptions can certainly affect somebody who is still ambitious and wants to move their career forward, right? That's also been debunked by research. Too set in their ways, and also that they're going to require a lot of time off because of health issues. And that's also been proven to be false. When I did this research and also spoke to younger women, and many of my clients are in that younger age category, their assumptions about younger workers are, well, they skip around too much. They have no loyalty, right? They change jobs often. And that affects also, as you can see, whether or not they are considered high potential for promotions and even hiring, right? So I was hired by a financial services firm a few years ago for a woman they considered high potential. And basically, I was hired because she was perceived to be too young, right? So you need to kind of up her executive presence, right? And the way she dresses, the way she looks, the way she communicates, you know, her overall executive presence. Because even though she was, I think, 40 at the time, she was her outward appearance and the way she talked and everything was too young. Um, and I've also been hired to help women who appear young based, and I know Mami's going to talk about this, based on their cultural background. Sometimes Asian women appear very young, and that works against them in the workplace. But I have to say, I got started in all this work because I had a client, a female attorney at a large tech firm, who was a star, right? And all of a sudden, she noticed that she wasn't included in meetings. She had just turned 50. That her boss wasn't giving her the same level of clients. And she couldn't figure out why. And there were comments from her younger colleagues, female clients, like that she's a dinosaur or whatever. And she had just turned 50. And that's when I said, this can't be an isolated incident, right? And since then, I've had many clients who are in law, in that profession, whether it's private firms or companies, and women face that kind of discrimination. But overall, I would say that how does ageism play out in the workplace? You can be denied promotions. You can be denied opportunities. You can be denied, yes, like a new job, maybe special assignments that would give you high visibility. And you can also be denied training. And that's a key, I think, you know, at every level of your career, but especially as you move 50 plus. In that category, a lot of workers are denied training because of age discrimination.
Great. Thank you, Bonnie, for setting the scene. I'm going to I'll probably come back to you with some follow-up because I like the way you sort of structured feel, act, and stereotype. I think that was actually quite a nice way of looking at things. Mami, can I come to you and ask you the same? What's your perspective on defining ageism and the stereotypes that Bonnie started talking about?
Thank you. First of all, I really appreciate being included this event. I'm so honored. So just I have to say that what Bonnie said is very, very interesting, and I agree with most of them. Um, yeah, the ages involves biases and stereotyping based on age or perceived age. But I have to say that in our culture, senior people, respecting senior people is very important. And if we looked at IP field valued pretty much experience highly. So often the time that older attorneys in a stronger position than younger ones. But even so, older attorneys need to keep showing that they can still actively contribute to as actively as before, because people tend to assume that older attorneys are less capable based on their appearance. As Bonnie said, that appearance the gray hairs and the wrinkles lead unconscious bias. Maybe not unconscious. But yeah, but on the other hand, younger attorneys can face assumptions that they are not good enough, they are not ready to complex work, and they lack experience, they lack the judgment, the profound judgment, necessary judgment. So in order to prove themselves, the younger attorneys need even work even harder and work hard and hard to prove their abilities. Bonnie mentioned that difficulties that older women face, and I agree with that. But as she also mentioned, as age, when I was young, young Asian women also face another challenge because Asian also always tend to look young. When I was in 30s, people think that I was a teenager. So I need to work much harder than men in my age to earn trust from my boss, my colleagues, and of course from my clients. That was very difficult. Once we reach a certain age, looking too young is not a concern anymore. But still, as a women in middle age, they are often under certain pressure that they need to show that they can still perform well, even while raising younger children. So that's another challenge. So after all, all age of peoples, every people at every stage of their life, their careers, need to prove themselves, keep combating against, pushing back against the age-related biases. I believe that some of the most damaging stereotypes are those so deeply ingrained that people's individual effort cannot do anything about it.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you raise a really important point about it's individuals can do so much, but then there are some wider societal and other aspects which we'll come to. Blanca, can I come to you from somebody who's earlier in their career than the panelists that have spoken, and your view on defining ageism and the sort of damaging stereotypes? What's your perspective on this?
Hi, Saiful. Well, thank you for the opportunity of participating in this panel. So I guess pretty much everything has been said at this point, much more eloquently by Bonnie and by Mami. But I guess to sum it up from a younger professional perspective, I guess ageism in that regard, when it comes to young people, may refer to the skepticism on the expertise that a younger professional may have. And I guess that I can relate in a sense with what Mami has previously stated, with being perceived much younger than you are. Which is something that I've seen happen to other colleagues, and well, there is a limit to how you can control your appearance to try to be perceived as older and all that, but I don't think we should. I think we should be evaluated on our merit and our individual skills, rather than how we look. And I guess that's basically the point of this discussion. So that's about all I could add at this point.
Thank you. I think I don't want to round up because I think there'll be conclusions towards the end anyway. But I think the strong message is be worried about the assumptions you're making of others, and don't underestimate people's capabilities. Just have those conversations.
Can I just
Bonnie,
add
yeah.
one thing? That I think it's important that we continue to build awareness about the effect of ageism on our careers and be proactive, right? Know what the assumptions are going to be about you, and and being proactive in terms of, as Mami said, showing your qualifications, getting out there and being visible, and showing how you are credible and can add value to your organization. My point is, don't wait until you're like 50 when somebody says, oh, you didn't get that promotion. Just be aware that you can control it to some degree in the way you control the narrative around your career.
Excellent advice. Can I? I'm going a little bit off what we discussed before, but you raised an important point, Bonnie, at the beginning about feel, act, and stereotype. So, how do we take that in our day-to-day lives? Do we question what we feel? Do we then therefore look at how we act, and then look at the assumptions? How does that play out? Could you just elaborate on that a little bit more?
I think it's important for all of us individually to assess where we are. When I started writing my book, Not Done Yet, and I was writing about assumptions about ageism and women and, women over 50, I was like, wow, I have these stereotypes. I make these assumptions myself. And I think that though we can't change, create systemic change overnight. What we can do, certainly as individuals, is say, well, what stereotypes do I own, right, about ageism? Or how do I feel about, when I see somebody in a walker, in the grocery store? Those kinds of things, because I think that's where it starts.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll move on to sort of the next sort of follow-up, the discussion point that we wanted to talk about was about hiring biases against both younger and older employees. I'm going to come to Blanca first, if that's okay. Have you seen this in practice, and what do you think organizations need to do to ensure sort of fairer recruitment and promotion?
Well, I do believe that age-based discrimination does exist when it comes to hiring and promotion. Through Bonnie's research, we can see that it does exist in various industries, and that includes IP. When it comes to younger professionals, like I mentioned before, most of the time we face skepticism regarding our expertise. And older professionals may encounter assumptions that refer to their adaptability to change. So personally, I believe that to foster a sort of fairness in organizations, they should try to focus more on performance-based evaluation systems, look to emphasize on skills, their contributions, and their results rather than age. And I believe that through establishing a clear, objective criteria for career progression within the organization and promotion may ensure that professionals at all levels are evaluated by their merits or on their merits. I believe that organizations that look to embrace structured mentorship and inclusive leadership programs can create a workplace where talent is recognized across all generations.
Thank you. Thank you. And can I ask Bonnie also to reflect on that in terms of hiring practices and fair recruitment?
Well, I just like to start with my research, which shows that when for women over 50, if they are out of the workplace, if they are lost a job or they took time off, it takes them over 2 years to get rehired. And the experience that I have with some of my clients is they're so qualified and they send their resume and an organization is so interested and they may go through 10 interviews, you know, a lot of interviews. But as soon as they have a Zoom interview where they are visible, the hiring process stops abruptly. So it has a lot to do, that has a lot to do with ageism. Both genders, if you're out of the workplace for more than 6 months, it's very difficult to get rehired. And if you're over 55, there are less jobs certainly available. What organizations can do, and I think they must do, is really evaluate their policies around recruitment and hiring, and especially the use of artificial intelligence. I think that organizations have outsourced a lot of their hiring processes to AI, assuming that it will help them be more productive, and it certainly does. But they have to look underneath at the algorithms, and the algorithms have been shown to be very prejudiced against women at any age of their career. There's subtle nuances to women's careers, like when they take time off, you know, and maybe they took a few years off for caregiving, either for their kids or their parents, and they'll be kicked out. Their resume will be kicked out immediately. So I think it's important to review all of those practices. When they're recruiting, keywords like fresh perspective or innovate. I mean, there's certain bias words that will definitely skew younger. If you look at somebody's website, do they have pictures of just young people? So those are all kinds of things that affect certainly the recruitment. And I think it's really important to train HR because they're dealing with a lot of these issues in the workplace. And according to my research, anyway, have not been prepared about how to handle a lot of it.
Yeah, I think you raised some really, really important points about the underlying assumptions of AI, sifting, talented people out unnecessarily, and making sure that your workplace reflects the people you want to hire, at least the way you advertise it. And then that needs to follow on through your recruitment and also promotion processes. Yeah, okay. I think we can move on to the third issue that we wanted to talk about, and that we touched upon this. I think, Blanca, you sort of touched upon leadership roles. Do you think age diversity, and I'll come to you first, Blanca, if that's okay, and then I'll come to Mami. In terms of age diversity and leadership roles, is there a good reflection of diversity in leadership roles, age diversity, and what do you think what barriers there are to sort of counteracting this, and how can we address this?
Well, I believe that age diversity leadership has improved in many professional spaces, particularly through initiatives that provide early leadership exposure to younger professionals. So speaking from a younger professional perspective, we can see this, for example, through the Young AI PPI committee when it comes to IP. There's also several IP organizations that are opening groups dedicated to young member leadership and fostering young member leadership. So I believe that's a positive reflection on how age diversity is being tackled, at least in our profession. And organizations that create these merit-based leadership pathways that offer opportunities to professionals at different stages of their careers benefit from these diverse perspectives. And it drives, I believe, sustainable growth for the organizations. So I guess in terms of a positive reflection with regards to age diversity and leadership roles, that's where I currently stand.
Thank you. And Mami, your perspective on this?
Yeah, what Blanca said is right, and I agree with that. But when I looked at our society, it means that in Japan, I don't think that age diversity is well reflected in leadership roles. In our country, the leadership positions have traditionally been held by people who are in their later stage of their careers. Because one of the reasons is that we have deep respect for seniority, and we often see that leadership position is something earned after many years of experience. While this system has its own strengths, but obviously, if leadership is made only by older people, the organization may struggle with to keep up with the quick change, rapid change that we are facing today. So we need, without fresh ideas and diverse perspectives, the organization cannot keep up with this change. People are starting to realize this issue, but change is very slow because the culture, the tradition is deeply rooted in culture and history. So that's it. But in Japan, we are seeing many startups that been led by younger people, and some of them are quite successful. So I hope that these kind of a positive example may encourage great age diversity in leadership roles.
I think that's a really, really important point that that you've raised about with age diversity in leadership roles, you've got more robust decision making because you've got different perspectives and not the narrow perspective of the sort of people who've been there for a long time. You've got people that can challenge and bring different perspectives all together and to make a better decision. So yeah, thank you for making that point. I think we can, unless somebody's got something to add, we can move to the next sort of perspective. Bonnie, did you want to add something?
I wanted to comment more on how to ensure older workers aren't left behind and younger workers are mentored. I think that an organization needs to offer training to all employees, not exclude anyone. Facilitate formal mentorship programs. There's some companies that actually do a match between, somebody who's on the older side, say 50 plus, and a younger one. And the reason that's so important is not only that the information exchange and what they can learn from each other. It's like once you are working firsthand with somebody out of your generation, all the stereotypes go out the window. Like, oh, I thought maybe they were too old to learn technology, or all those stereotypes when you personally get to know somebody. So it's so good on so many levels. And to facilitate intergenerational networking as well, I think companies could benefit a lot. Also, companies can offer incentives to hire diverse teams. And by diverse, it can also mean across different generations.
Thank you. I think you sort of led us into what maybe you might have wanted to say about the next issue we wanted to discuss, which was about workplaces becoming more tech-driven. And how do we ensure that older employees don't get left behind and younger employees receive mentorship? Um, so maybe I can pass that question to Blanca because I think Bonnie, you sort of introduced the issue really.
Well, I think I skipped a question.
Yeah, it's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
No,
But yeah,
I really do appreciate your comments, Bonnie, because I guess you're much more experienced on the subject, and certainly I guess I wasn't that far off because I'm a huge believer in mentorship programs as well. Because as you said, it allows for experienced professionals to provide guidance to younger professionals. And at the same time, that gives them the opportunity to engage with technological advancements, like from the part of the younger professionals, which contribute a little more on the digital fluency and adaptability and new approaches to problem solving side of the coin. So I personally believe that effective collaboration between generations requires that balanced exchange of knowledge. And like we mentioned, because experienced professionals offer strategic depth and legal expertise in terms of our profession specifically. And collaboration allows for the most successful integration of skills. So I guess that encouraging this sort of open dialogue and knowledge sharing spaces helps foster this sort of workplace where technology it enhances professional development rather than becoming a point of division between generations.
great. And Bonnie, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm sorry that I kind of skipped ahead there, but one other thing that I think organizations can do is to use performance reviews as opportunities to upskill. So very often, once you have your performance review, you're given some guidelines for how to improve. And as part of that, I really think it needs to be the organization helping an employee to say, here are some resources for you. This is what you need to improve. Here's some, what we can offer in training. Here's what you can get outside of the organization also.
Yeah. So I think that sort of leads me. I've done some mentoring in the past, and I think one of the things that have worked well and haven't worked well is that mentorship can be quite free-flowing and open, but giving some structure to make sure that things develop is really, really important. Otherwise, it's sort of, yes, you get different people's perspectives, but the point is to learn in a sort of a progressive way. And without that structure, it becomes just a sort of bit of a talk shop.
I highly recommend that. That's a great point. And one thing I will recommend to my clients is to sit down and say, well, what are your expectations? What is this, how often are we going to meet? Who sets the agenda? Those kinds of things, because in many ways, mentorship can be casual and it can still offer some benefits. But I think both parties get the most out of it when it's more structured, to your point.
Right. Thank you. I think we're doing pretty well for time. I don't see any questions that have come up. So I think we can take our time with the remainder of the questions. And so I'm not going to keep you so much to time. I think what we wanted to talk about was the existing policies and legal frameworks around ageism and how they combat it. What sort of changes would you like to see? I'm going to come to each panelist and ask your perspective, particularly from your jurisdiction. So, Bonnie, can I go to you first?
Sure. Here in the United States in 1967, Congress enacted the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. And the idea of that was to promote employment of older workers. I think it's for 40 plus, right? That was the age limit at that time. And to prohibit arbitrary age discrimination and policies. It prohibits in theory, it prohibits age discrimination in hiring, compensation, benefits, etc. But the law is very weak. And there are many ways that companies get around the law. It's very difficult to prove age discrimination here in the States. And by the way, that can vary by state. There's some states that interpret the law a lot more leniently, California, say, New York. So a lot of it depends on where you live. But for the most part, companies have the upper hand. One of the issues that comes up a lot is the use of NDAs and non-disclosure. And when you are forced to or strongly suggested that you sign an NDA, you really are giving up all of your power to file a claim against your company for age discrimination. That's one thing that I know has affected many of my clients, and I don't know if it's predominantly more for women or not, but it's a big factor in prohibiting, the filing of claims and making complaints about the company. So we do have a law. Activists have been, trying to get some changes made so that it is easier to prove age discrimination. But in some cases, a company will say, that's just bullying, especially when a woman has been subjected to comments, a lot of inappropriate comments. It's interpreted as bullying, right? And the company can get away with it. So here in the States, it's something that is an issue because it's very difficult. It's a weak law.
Great. Blanca, can you comment from a Latin American perspective?
Yeah, when it comes to my country particularly, there are dispositions in the labor code, which is from 1959, regarding age discrimination and how that should not be a factor. There is also a law against the discrimination of women in the workforce, which also includes some articles based on age discrimination. However, as Bonnie said, the enforcement of these laws remain a challenge. There are reports and many accounts from experiences on age discrimination persisting, especially in certain sectors. So while there is a legal framework, the effective implementation of the same requires some strengthening, right? And in the case of my country in particular, there wasn't a social movement or event that promoted the integration of these values in our legal system. So that just makes it, I guess, all the more weaker in a sense, because there hasn't been a particular shift in values that come to reflecting these laws themselves. So that's what I can say on the part of my country in particular. There is a law, there is a legal framework, but there isn't much enforcement being done.
Yeah, I think you raise a really important point about sort of the context in which the laws are written. If there's no sort of social movement around it, the sort of practical enforcement of them just doesn't really happen. Mami, can I come to you?
Sure. If I was listening to what Bonnie says and Blanca says, our country is something like Blanca's side. Bonnie says that the law is very weak, but I think our law is even weaker. Um, yeah, the employers in Japan are not allowed to make any age limitation for hiring and recruitment, but still in the real world, that the job applicants are required to put their age on their resume. So there is age-based biases. I know that it's not possible in the States,
Right.
and right, so it's different, and still the majority of the hiring is right out of the school. So even though that many people are, changing their job in later their career, but still majorities are staying in the same companies. And we are taking a seniority-based system. If that's so, then it's very difficult for companies and entities to not to have not have a set retirement age. So there is a mandatory retirement age because the seniority-based system, your wage is increasing year by year, so it's very difficult for entity to keep the system forever. So there is a set retirement age. But some employers just started to change the seniority-based system to meritocracy system. So that may help change the structure, and that would change the set of the mandatory retirement, and maybe eventually change the recruitment and hiring system. But still, there's no society movement in Japan either. So that legal frame is quite weak.
We do. I think this is. Oh, yeah, go on, buddy. Go on.
Yeah, I think that one thing we need to be very aware of is the shift in the demographics. So the workforce is getting older. Well, right now we've got what, 5 generations in the workplace, which is fairly new. Because and when Mami said, mandated retirement age, this kind of stimulated me to think about, well, we don't have that. And I don't believe that the EU has it either. And I had pulled up some statistics that the number of older workers continues to grow, right? Here in the States, 9% of the employees are over 75. Currently,
Wow.
19% of adults 65 plus are employed. And in the EU, 16% of the workforce is over 55. And that's only, so the birth rate is decreasing, and our people are living longer and want to work. And in fact, there are a lot of people who can't afford to retire. So they're trying to stay in the workplace, whether it's part-time or full-time. So what we have is this shift where there are going to be more and more older workers in the workplace, and therefore companies and countries need to adapt some of the laws, or at least work to figure out how to enforce them better.
Yeah, I think if they're with this sort of age shift, we must make sure that the people coming through are given the opportunities that people who've been through have had, at the same time, we've got to balance that people who want to continue to contribute and are able to don't get pushed out. So it's a fine balance. We do have a question from the audience, which we certainly appreciate. I think we'll take that, and then we'll go to the last question that we wanted to answer ourselves. It's a question we've touched upon, but I think maybe we just need to clarify it. It was probably our second question. I'll read out the question. What policies or strategies can organizations implement to ensure fair and inclusive recruitment for candidates of all ages? Blanca, can I come to you first? I think just one or 2 points about policies or strategies to get fair and inclusive recruitment for candidates of all ages.
I guess some of the ones that were mentioned before, such as encouraging mentorship programs, allowing for collaboration and open dialogue between or among generations, where both can benefit on what the other brings to the table and such. So I guess that's my contribution.
Okay. And Bonnie, if you can focus on sort of recruitment practices, really, I think that's where the question's trying to get us
Yeah,
clear.
I think companies need to do a thorough assessment of what their policies are around recruitment and hiring, and take a deep dive into, as I said before, looking at the job descriptions, what are some of the key words they're using? And are those keywords appealing to all generations, or are they excluding some? Simple things like looking on the website, are they all just young employees there? Looking at some of the algorithms, really looking at the algorithms and how they might eliminate some very qualified potential employees. And hiring, and not hiring, but training HR, human resources.
Thank you. Mami, did you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I'm still trying to think, what the organization can do, but I have the problem is not the policy. I have the problem is that probably the organization or entity or the people who are in charge of hiring are not seriously trying to get all the diverse age diverse people. They don't have enough good experience to encourage them to do so. They are so used to hire younger people, younger is better, and they still have such a belief. So if they are bottom of the heart that they believe that's better, hiring younger people is better. I think it's practically true in Japan still, as I mentioned that a seniority-based system. So younger people, if they hire younger people, it's cheaper, and if hire older people, it's more expensive. So they need some experience, good experience, that a successful outcome when they hire diverse, age diverse people, something good happens. But I don't know how we can change that situation.
Okay. I think we're doing well enough for time that we can just go to the last question. And I'm going to start by asking Mami first. If there is one key action every organization or individual should take to combat ageism, what should it be? Mami, your
Okay,
thoughts?
sure. I think it's already been said by Bonnie and Blanca, but one key action that organization or individual should take is to actively recognize or highlight a lot of good real life examples, uh, both of young professionals who are responsible and capable and matured and hardworking, and older professionals who are keen to learn new stuff and continuously making meaningful contributions. if people have actual opportunity to see those real life examples, that may make a big change. We all have unconscious biases, but if we see so many good real life examples, that would reshape the unconscious bias. Encouraging collaboration between younger and older people, colleagues, that should create people to see each other's strengths firsthand and foster mutual understanding and respect.
Perfect. Thank you. Blanca, can I come to you now? On that same question about key action, one key action.
Well, I guess when it comes to combating ageism, through the hiring process and the promotion process, implementing merit-based evaluation systems, such as the ones mentioned by Bonnie, where we should focus on skills and contributions rather than any assumptions based on age. Like I said before, I am a true believer in mentorship programs and fostering this sort of intergenerational collaboration. And I guess there was also a point been made during the discussion that I think is also an action that should be, and that is the access to continuous learning opportunities, irregardless of age. That I believe can also provide for the opportunity to build a workplace where professionals of all ages can thrive based on their abilities and impact, rather than all the outdated stereotypes that sometimes we have ourselves, but we don't perceive them.
Excellent. Thank you, Blanca. And Bonnie, if you could give some closing comments on that, combating ageism.
I think, well, first of all, I think that assumptions at any level are really dangerous. And organizations are just as guilty, right, as individuals. I'm a big fan of actually doing surveys and doing the research. So I think an organization can start there by asking their employees what they feel about ageism, gendered ageism, what they've experienced firsthand, because I think sometimes an organization will hire a company to come in, a third party, on the assumption that this is a problem or that's a problem. And then they have this training program that doesn't really hit, this one-off training program that doesn't really impact anything. So I think you need to look to your employees to see what their experience has been and then design some training programs. And then when it comes to individuals, I go back to the point I made earlier, that we all need to challenge the assumptions and stereotypes that we have. And if you're really honest and do a deep dive, you may be surprised at some of the assumptions and stereotypes and beliefs that you have.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, we've sort of come to about time. Can I thank Bonnie, Mami, and Blanca? Thank you for sharing your insights. And yeah, I think from my perspective, it's very much about what I've learned today is about challenging the assumptions and the biases that we all have. Keep this topic at the forefront so people can question their assumptions. Don't just assume that it's one of the things that people think about. I think people often overlook it. So I think that was an important aspect, that we keep that education going. And also about the point that Blanca made quite a few times about meritocracy. Let's look at meritocracy rather than just the skills or experience that one person might have based on their limited experience, but allow them to grow in all areas. So thank you for everyone for sharing. Can I just also give a quick shout out to the upcoming webinar, in fact, on 9th of 10th of July, which Blanca is actually going to be contributing to. It's the 4th edition of the Young AI PPI Members Summit. And also, hopefully, in early May, we should have registration open for AIPPI Congress in Yokohama, Japan, and looking forward to seeing as many people as we can there. Thank you, everyone, once again, and have a good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.